guess just start off, just share your story, and then we can go from there.
Okay. So my name is Daniela Donoso. I was born in Quito, Ecuador, and I moved to the U.S., specifically Miami, Florida, when I was 6 months old. When we came to the U.S., I came on a tourist visa. So did my brothers and my mom, and my dad came on a worker's visa. And the last time I was in Ecuador, I was 4 years old. That was the last time, I guess, we were able to travel outside of the U.S. So my freshman year of high school, we were still in Miami. My dad was going back and forth between Jacksonville and Miami. And both of my brothers were in New York at the time in college. And then at the end of that year, he said, okay, we have to move to Jacksonville because that's where he got a job. So we moved to Jacksonville, and for me, it was a complete culture shock. I really, the first day of high school, I'd never seen so many blonde white people in my entire life. So it was definitely, it was weird. And I know I don't look like the typical Hispanic, but when people would hear me speak Spanish and things, they just assumed that I was Mexican, which was different for me also, because in Miami everyone embraces, you know, where they're from. So yeah, you might be Cuban, or you might be from Honduras, or you might be, you know, from the Dominican. So it was weird, people just like assuming that I was Mexican, and it's just like this whole other culture that I hadn't been exposed to, because Miami is so diverse. And so in Jacksonville, it was particularly hard just when people would make references to, you know, oh, Daniela, go make me a taco, or, you know, where's your green card, and things like that, because nobody close to me, nobody knew that I was undocumented, just my family and a couple of close friends, but it's not really something that you share with people, because you're living in fear of being deported. You know, if I tell the wrong person and they tell their parents, and their parents decide to tell the police, like, what could happen? You know, what could happen to my parents? My mom just like is scared of driving to work, driving me to school, because of, you know, the chance that she gets pulled over and they detain her and deport her. So within this time, like, Arizona had come out with laws where they were basically doing that, like stopping people whenever they wanted, checking papers. There was this thing called E-Verify coming out, where the job that you have has to verify, like, your documents. It was kind of a scary time, and it was just hard for me to not be able to tell, like, friends that, and I just became really good at lying, because, you know, by this time I'm 16, 17, and friends are asking, like, hey, why don't you have a license? Like, why don't you get a car? Like, why do you have to take the bus? Why do you need a ride? Or, like, oh, come on this mission trip with me overseas, like where you want to go to Jamaica, and just, like, always making up excuses for things that I just didn't feel were fair. And then it was weird too, like, when family would come. So I feel like there's always going to be, and there always was, a disconnect. Like, I didn't know what dinner at grandma's house meant every Sunday, or, you know, I don't know, even though I'm a citizen of Ecuador, I don't know what Ecuador is like at all. I don't remember anything. I remember my grandma's house when I was 4. You know, there's friends that have gone on mission trips to Ecuador and been like, oh, we saw this and this and this, and they expect me to know what that is, and I don't, and I feel almost ashamed and guilty that I can't, that I don't know where my roots and where I come from. And, like, my parents have done a really great job of, you know, making sure that I am fluent in Spanish, and making sure that, you know, I'm up to date and know what's going on. So when you're undocumented, it means that you don't have a license, you don't have a social security number, and so without those things, you know, you can't travel outside of the U.S. And if you do leave, you get a 10-year penalty. So if my parents ever decided, with the approval that they had, all they needed to do was get their passport stamped, and then they would be approved. But if they left the country, they had to get the passport stamp, from the Ecuadorian consulate. But if they left the country, they couldn't come back for 10 years. And so we were just, like, stuck. And, like, my mother has a medical degree, and when we were in Jacksonville, she was working for a telemarketer's office because that's all that, she could get. And it was just, senior year was particularly hard for us. I've always been a really good student. My brother's also. And, I took a ton of AP classes, and when I was getting ready to apply for colleges, I had to apply as an international student to every school that I applied to. And when you're undocumented, you can't apply for FAFSA or get Bright Futures, even if I qualified 100%. And so most of my senior year I spent looking for private scholarships and applying for those and going on interviews and things like that. So my senior year, my mother's father was really sick, and she, looked at me and she told me, I'm the one that should be taking care of him, and I'm not, I should be there, and I'm not, and I just realized, the U.S. isn't the entire world. Like, yeah, it's my entire world, but that doesn't mean that we need to stay here. And after many other hard conversations, we decided, okay, maybe it's time. It's a good time now for us to leave. Coming to Florida State, I joined a club, an organization called the Advocates for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. And like in high school, those kinds of things don't exist. You see in like a big picture, like people marching to Washington, D.C. and things like that for this immigration fight. But for it to be so personal, it's called AIR. It was just such a great outlet for me to be able to share who I was. And I remember when DACA came out, I shared with some of my close friends like what had been going on, and it was just like this sense of relief.
And this is the first time, maybe ever, you've been able to share, besides your family and very close friends.
Yeah. So, and I remember the first meeting I went to, and I raised my hand and I said, like, yeah, I'm undocumented, like, that's me right now. And I just felt so much power in that, and it was so freeing to be able to tell people, like, yeah, I've been living in this closet, and I haven't been able to tell anyone about my status because I live in fear. And even though I get to feel that sense of relief, like, my parents still don't. Like, they don't qualify for this, and they don't get any of these benefits. So it's a great program, and I think it's only a Band-Aid, though. You have to renew it every 2 years. Like, I've already had to renew it. But I did get a driver's license. I do have a social security number. I was able to apply for my first job and things like that, and be able to help my parents out. So it's definitely, I think, a great program. There's just this like blanket of uncertainty because with the presidential election, nobody knows what could happen to this program. Some people have said, like, I'm just gonna cut the entire program and deport all these people. It's like, is that really realistic? Like, do you really want to do that? And so, but yeah, so being able to come to FSU and have find a group of activists and people that are like you, that have similar stories and that share similar struggles and things like that. It's just been really great.